betrayed me too many times, oh, it makes me feel like nobody else. Yeah, I know. Yes, I do. One, don't pick up the phone. You know he's always calling because he's drunk and alone. Two, don't let him in. You'll have to get them out again. Three, don't be his friend. You know you're gonna wake up in his bed in the morning. If you're under him, you ain't getting over him. Welcome to Sweetheart Before I Say I Do. I know, ladies and gentlemen, you have all said those rules to yourself again and again and again. I'm not going to do this to myself. Welcome to Sweetheart Before I Say I Do. My name is Marissa. I am your host. I have with me this evening my co-host, Kevin Long. He is the male perspective in the Own It magazine and publishing company. And we have our special guest, Adema Braswell. They are in the house, and we are going to talk about everything love relationships. I'm super excited to have these gentlemen with me tonight. And listen, guys, you guys better go easy on me because I'm the only girl in the house. And so listen, don't let me lean in. So I'm super excited because now we have you gentlemen here with me tonight. And I'm so excited because a lot of times the one who's really missing in the conversation is you guys. It's you guys. And so I'm so excited. We have Adema Braswell is in the house. He is the best-selling author, and he is a licensed therapist. The book is called From Relational Hurt to Spiritual Healing, Devotional Journey from a Broken Soul to Soul Mates. And so we want to talk to him tonight about what he wrote in his book. The male's perspective. We need to hear from our men. I tell you, just in an overview, Adema, I looked at, I read your book. I've had your book for a minute. And what I really love is just to give the audience a glimpse of, there are like 5 chapter titles that I broke out because these chapter titles really speak to a lot of what's going on in our love relationships. Accept the reject. Love it. Are you for me? So these are some critical questions that we need to be asking in these conversations in these relationships because we get so caught up in the whimsical, right? We get caught up in, we meet the person, we connect with them that moment, and we're attracted to them physically, but we don't do the introspective work that's necessary. So the first chapter is accept the reject. Are you for me? Self-sabotage. You are a pearl. Battle of the sexes. These are some critical topics that are like the pink elephant in the room. Am I correct?
Yes, definitely. First, let me thank both of you guys for having me on the show. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, exactly what you're saying as you read the titles of the book, those are some very critical, some very vital things that we go through in relationships as singles. A lot of the book is geared towards singles that have gone through some type of hurt, some type of pain, some type of heartache, and they're trying to come on the other side of it, looking for their soulmate or just looking to heal before they enter relationships. So the book really deals with a lot of different relational topics with a biblical principles undergirding it.
Yeah, so you have a biblical framework for it, model, methodology, principles, core values. And so, it kind of aligns with what I say is Sweetheart Before I Say I Do, right? It's like doing the introspective work that's required before you go into the love relationship. You say here, just as part of your title, it says, from relational hurt to spiritual healing. Now, the song I came in on is called New Rules, right? So this person, the lyrics from this song is really to say, listen, I have to to approach this from a different angle. I need to be aware. I need to be cognizant. I need to be present about my approach in the love relationship. And so, sweetheart, before I say as do, says the same thing. So, what I do like about your book is you do talk about battle of the sexes. So, share with me what, I didn't get a chance to go in deep into the book, but share a little bit about that chapter, the battle of the sexes. I want to see, without me putting out there my ideology and experience, I want to dig in deep. And then after you respond, Kevin, I know you're sitting over there ready to go in. I want Kevin to have a chance to have his own questions for you as well. So talk about the battle of the sexes and your perspective on that in your experience.
Yeah, that devotional, that chapter really speaks about the way men and women are different and the way we handle our differences. I believe that one of the biggest issues when it comes to relationships is not the fact that we're so different, is that we villainize each other for our differences,
That's
opposed
good.
to embracing each other for the differences. I always say people confuse sameness with compatibility. And when I look at compatibility, I often look at something like a team. I'm into sports, so if you're talking about basketball on a team, you have a point guard, you have a center, you have a forward, you have all these different positions, people that come with different skills, with different abilities, and have different responsibilities. And I parallel that with relationships. Men and women come with different skills. We come with different abilities, even different responsibilities with a relationship. Now, when you have a team, when you put those differences together, you bring your set of skills, and you bring your set of skills, and we put it together. We can win games. We can even win championships with it. But if we start to argue and complain about our differences, if we start to villainize each other, if we start to try to take over another person's role or another person's responsibility, that's when you lose the game. And I think that's the same thing happens with us in relationships, opposed to embracing the different skills and talents and abilities that we have, the different way we think and process, the different way we feel, and putting that together to create something greater, something bigger, something stronger. We battle over those differences.
We battle. I like that.
Wow,
Yeah.
I
So
like
Kevin, I'm
that.
gonna
That's
let you.
really
I'm gonna
good.
let you go in.
Yeah. I want to, as a therapist, do you often work with a lot of men? You work with men and women, and do you work with just as many men or as many women? Do you work with the both of them equally?
I my I specialize in working with couples, so
Okay.
I work with a lot of couples. But I do also do individual therapy. I also do family therapy. So I work with kids. I work with couples. I work with men. I work with women. I wouldn't probably my lowest population would be men. But
Okay.
I do have some men. I do have some men clients, and I also have some men that come for therapy for their relationships. So
Okay. And okay. And when you work with couples, do you also do individual sessions with
yes,
the couple? Okay.
for those that need it, for those that require it. Sometimes a couple might come for therapy, but they're not ready to sit down together. It could be an issue with communication, or the relationship could just be too volatile at the moment, and
Okay.
a session turns into a fight. In those moments, I usually have to separate them, meet with one individual on one day, meet with the other individual another day, try to work with them individually, then bring them back together after we kind of set the ground rules of how we want the couple sessions to go. So it happens both ways. There's times I have an individual and they want to bring in their mate, and that can turn into a therapy session as well.
Okay. And now let me ask you, when specifically with men, and tell me if that you do you find any particular trends that you find that men seem to lack when it comes to how they approach the relationship or how they interact within the relationship? Because I know that uh, a lot of men sometimes we tend to lack certain how can I put it uh, certain emotional skills that we don't tend to delve into. We don't get into our emotions, but
Mhm.
just generally, do you find there are some trends that men tend to lack when it comes to dealing in the relationship?
Yes, definitely. That communication is a huge one. A lot of the couples that I work with, the major complaint from the wives or the female counterpart is that um, he doesn't know how to communicate his emotions effectively. I have guys that admit that they don't know how to communicate their emotions effectively, and whether it's be by the way they were groomed, the way they were conditioned. As men, we are often taught, to not be as vulnerable or not be as expressive. We One of the only emotions that a lot of us know how to communicate is anger. We don't even know how to communicate happiness on some levels. So I have a lot of guys that come in and they need a lot of help just finding the vocabulary to identify their emotions a lot of the times. And that's a task in itself. Just learning how to put words to how you feel or what you're thinking, and then getting over the hump of actually verbalizing it and expressing it to their mate. That's another challenge that we often come in contact with. But I would say communicating your emotions would be the number one. If I have to pick a number two, there's a lot of guys that have enter relationships or enter marriage and they are not fully aware of their role as a man in a relationship. They're not fully aware of how to be a leader in a relationship because they never had that type of role model for them. A lot of the guys that I counsel grew up in a home without a father, so they never had that example, or they never had a mentor or just a man to look up to. And so when they come into a marriage or come into a relationship, that's often a challenge, where the wife or the woman feels like she's the leader in kind of handling everything. And from what I see, most wives don't want to be in that position, so that
Yeah.
causes conflict.
Wow. Okay. Very good. Very good. I find that very interesting because I know that men are often expected to be the providers. Sometimes men, I think, kind of fall back on if I'm providing, then I'm doing my job. Do you think that there are a great number of other things that you believe men should bring to a relationship that go beyond just providing? I know we say things like providing, protection, but the broader scope of what men bring, do you think that women truly, uh, well, let's see how I can put this. Maybe let me bring it back because I think that a lot of men don't even really truly know what we are supposed to be beyond just simple protectors and providers. What would you uh, think that the characteristics of men, especially if you're basing it on putting it on a biblical framework, what do you think that men need to bring more of other than just being providers and protectors?
A lot of guys that I work with, they bring a lot of trauma to relationships. They've been through some things in their past. They've grown up around in a traumatic environment, so
Hmm.
they will bring that inability to communicate. They'll bring that they'll come with a wall of protection. So they'll they'll lack their understanding, like that emotional understanding of their wives. So as I and that's the things they bring, and they have really been indoctrinated with a lot of negative um, concepts, a lot of negative thoughts. I have this mentoring program that I work with young guys. It's called the sexual re-education of black men, because a lot of men come in with the miseducation of sex. So that really affects them in a relationship. So to answer the question, like that leadership, that understanding, that level of sensitivity that they need to really coexist with their wives. A lot of men haven't developed it. A lot of men haven't practiced it. So when they get into a marriage or long-term relationships, it's
Right.
extremely hard for them to actually put it in use. And that's vital. It's vital. If you want a healthy, happy relationship, you need to know how to balance, being a provider, being a protector, but you also need to have a sensitive side, empathetic side as well, because she needs that.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just want to chime in. I must say this is I love you guys. So for me, it's about you getting healthy, because by you really meeting the needs and showing up the way that God designed you, you actually feel fulfilled, right? So when you guys are able to get healed and whole, showing up the way that you were designed to show up is like super beneficial for you. Like it's beneficial for you because what does the saying go? Happy wife, happy life, right? But ultimately, when you are in alignment with how God has created you and designed the love relationship, is when everybody is functioning the way that they were designed in the fullness of that, in a healthy way, everyone benefits. Everyone benefits from it. It's not just about you meeting her needs, but in you meeting her needs, she is now freed up to meet your needs. So the woman should be responding to you accordingly. And so I am sitting back and I'm just like loving what I'm hearing. I wrote in the I wrote in the comments like, guys really need to hear this segment of this show because you're always hearing the women, and we need to really really hear from the men. And so I wanted to share how you tackled the when you talked about the battle of the sexes, because I think that really this is the biggest issue, is that if we could stop villainizing it, as you said, uh, and start really embracing our difference as compliments, not to be competitive, not to be divisive, but actually to bring harmony. Because if you love doing the dishes and I love doing the dishes, who's cooking? Who's cleaning? Right? So if you love, mowing the lawn and I love mowing the lawn, then who's doing something else. So we need to have diversity because diversity covers all the ground. We need to have to be opposites in some area so that everything gets covered. And so I like how you mentioned to get rid of villainizing our differences and begin to understand that our differences were designed on purpose for us to complement each other, and to build upon that. So I really love that approach. So you also mentioned, and another thing in your counseling, when you're working with families, you mentioned about how sometimes you have to counsel based on the level of, I guess, aggravation or um, the level of intensity of being at odds, is that you have to counsel the couple one by one. But do you believe that ultimately there has to be a point in the journey through being going through therapy, that there has to be a point in which the couple comes back together for therapy? Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. They have to come back especially if they came for couples therapy. I always bring them back, but there there's sometimes in sessions where having them together is not effective for them.
Right.
It's not
Oh,
beneficial for the session. But we definitely have to bring them back. So if I divide them and try to teach them different skills, try to help them identify their triggers. That's good to know individually, but you really put it to practice when they're together. So I have to bring them back to so they can apply what we actually learned individually.
right, right. Because knowledge, until it's applied, is of no effect, right?
Mhm.
Because it's just knowledge. It's not empowerment. It's not education yet. Until it's applied, is I call it real life application. Another thing that you had mentioned was men are the lowest of who you counsel because why is that, and how do we advocate? How do we help our men? What can we do to help our men to show up more so in therapy? Because you guys are the head. So no matter what a woman thinks or how she feels, as the head goes, so does the body. If you're gonna have a marriage or have a relationship with a man, he is the head. He has to understand leadership if he's the head, right? Because as the head goes, so does the body. And if the head does not know what it's doing, then the body is in chaos and can't maximize its full performance. So how do we get our men to show up for counseling? What can we do?
Well, first, I would like to say I've been doing this for about 15 years now. So I'm glad to say that there has been an increase
Okay.
with men, especially black men, coming to therapy. So when I compared to when I first started, so that's very encouraging to see. And what I've what I've seen has been effective. Um, First is that men have to want to come to therapy, and that's almost with anybody. But if they want it to be effective, if they want it to be beneficial, they have to come. Um, what has been very useful is me starting small groups with men, like not necessarily calling it therapy. We can call it empowerment, brotherhood groups, iron sharpens iron groups, and we seem to be more comfortable talking in a group, or even if you're sitting listening. A lot of times in my small groups, after the group is over, a brother might pull me to the side and say, "Listen, I really need to sit down and talk to you." But I think that introduces them to therapy, gathering, socializing, that camaraderie with other men, um, you know, other men being transparent and vulnerable, and them seeing that it's okay. I think they get more comfortable with doing it individually because we've really been conditioned as men, to be this stoic, stoned hard type of individual. We've been conditioned not to show any pain, not to cry, things of that nature. So it's much harder for to get guys to open up in that way. But I think once we're in a group, it helps a lot. It opens that avenue to seek some deeper help.
Let me ask you a question. You just what you just explained about men being groomed to be stoic and not wanting to expose their vulnerabilities. How do you think women can help men in that department?
I think women can help by first understanding where a lot of men are coming from. That it's not some type of malfunction in us, but we've been through some things. We've been through some things, and we've been taught some things. It's not nature, in my opinion. It's not nature. Nature is conditioning. So I think if they have that understanding, that'll first start with giving them some patience on our inability to communicate our emotions more effectively. But then even after that patience, after the understanding, like I think just the encouragement. It might take us baby steps to start to open up.
Right, right.
Be his cheerleader with even with the baby steps. Encourage him like, hey, he maybe he just said I'm sad today. Make it seem like he did the best thing in the world. So he'll get more comfortable. He'll get more encouraged to feel like, oh, I'm not that bad with this emotional stuff. I'm pretty good at it. If my lady or my wife seems to be receiving it, so encourage him even with the baby steps. And if he when he takes baby steps, he's going to start to take more steps. So I
Right.
think just that encouragement, that patience, goes a long way with helping men to seek therapy, seek help, explore past trauma, triggers, things of that nature. But
All right.
and the other half definitely has to be on the man, his willingness and his readiness to
Right.
seek help as well.
All right.
Yeah. So I didn't want to. I wanted to give Kevin a minute just in case he wanted to ask you something. So to me, as a woman, how much more important prior to me helping him, prior to me being his number one cheerleader, what is critical for the man to succeed? Would you say that it's critical for him to want it um, in combination with her cheering him on? Because if he doesn't want it or doesn't see it or anything like that, that's going to be an uphill battle for that woman cheering him on. What does he need to do, independent of the woman speaking into his life and supporting him? What does he need to do? Because introspective work is work that we do on ourselves. Having external influences and resources and support are external variables. But doesn't something has to happen with the individual themselves?
Yeah, it's definitely. First, I think that the major part will be being honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. Um, as men, we use a lot of defense mechanisms to avoid dealing with our issues. We might project on other people. We minimize our issues. We do a lot of we use a lot of defense mechanisms, and that's just a way of managing our own anxiety, managing our own pain, so that we don't have to face it because it's hard to face. So the first step is always being honest with yourself and realizing that you know I do have some issues. Things that happened to me in the past does affect me right now in my present. Um, Getting to that point could be difficult. But if he wants to really seek help, he has to be honest with himself, look himself in the mirror, and say, "Hey, I'm not functioning at the level that's most effective, most beneficial for me, and it's getting in my way of progressing in life. It's getting in my way of being the most effective father, or the most effective husband, or even the most effective employee." So you know that honesty and looking yourself in the mirror is always the biggest step that he would have to take.
Wow. Mm.
And so now my question is, and I could be stepping on some toes or whatever, but outside of, so when a man comes together with a woman, and it's his wife, it's a prime, it's his top priority. We already know his relationship with God, but it's his top priority. Make sure that that relationship with his wife is intact and it's flourishing. Am I correct?
Is that his top priority?
Yeah,
I would
his
say,
top.
I would say after God, his top priority, kind of what you hinted to before, would be to make sure that his relationship with himself is correct, to make sure that he's walking in a healthy space, that he's going through that journey of self discovery, self actualization, learn to self love. Because if he hasn't gone through that journey, there's no way he can do it for his wife. So I would say after God, it has to be himself, and then he can focus on other relationships that's in his life.
Right. And so I guess I was saying this in because what we have done as a society, we've gotten things out of whack in the sense of it's your relationship with God. Of course, your relationship with God is really going to be determined on how much you love yourself. Because when you really love yourself, that is normal. Like that's innate. That's the thing that's going to happen. But what we've done in our love relationships is sometimes if we have children with the partner, it's now the children is a priority. But that's out of order. It's your relationship with God, it's self, it's your partner, your it should be your husband or your wife, and then it's your children. Because I think that a lot of relationships um, really suffer because they neglect that relationship and jump to the kids. In this relationship, and I'll always say this, and I know my aunt is probably like, Marissa, but one relationship that I've always really cherished and respected was my aunt's relationship with her husband, and how he made sure that it was known to the children that she's his priority. Then they come, then it's them, and that they are a dynamic team, that they are infused together, they work together. So the kids, when they're speaking to the mom, they're actually speaking to the dad. When they're speaking to the dad, they're speaking to the mom. And that's the rightful order of things. But our society, in all of its dysfunctionality, has gotten that twisted. So would you agree that using, if we're looking at God's model, if we do things according to his, how his way of things, the kingdom way, it's him, it's you making sure, of course, you're healthy and you're well balanced, because you're bringing something to the table. Like you're injecting who you are into this relationship. And if you're not healthy, you're bringing unhealthy, um, you're bringing unhealthy energy, attitude and all of that behavior into the relationship. So you have to be healthy. But the other thing we do is we just skip. We skip pleasing each other as husband and wife. We skip pleasing each other as lover, and then we automatically act like it's the kids. But if we're right, then the kids will just follow in alignment.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree. One of the models that I really enjoy using with families is called structural family therapy, and basically, it it draws a picture of the structure of a family and the hierarchy of a family. And the husband and the wife, or the mother and father, is always at top, and the kids are always, under. And it talk about the different boundaries between the husband and the wife, the type of relationship that you have. Because what happens if you ignore or neglect that relationship with your husband and your wife, and try to just focus on the kids, you're going to be affecting the kids in a negative way, maybe unknowingly. You think you're giving the kids love, you think you're giving them all the attention, but you're modeling some unhealthy relationship habits by being so divided from your spouse. So and that messes up the structure. That can create jealousy. Believe it or not, that can create jealousy between a parent and a child. That can create all types of conflict.
Yeah.
Um, the kids never see how to effectively uh, resolve conflict. So there's so many things that happens when you ignore and neglect that mother, father, or husband and wife relationship. So I think the proper structure is always mother, father, children, and then other relationships fall under that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that when we don't show love and affection in front of our children, within reason, appropriate levels of love and affection,
Right.
we don't teach them the beauty of marriage. We don't teach them how beautiful marriage can be and how wonderful it is, and that it should be a pursuit for them. I remember my kids growing up. They always wanted to be married. They always wanted to have children, because of the model that was set in front of them. And so that is critical. It's critical for us to be awake that it is our relationship first and then the children. And if we're getting along and we're being respectful and we're being considerate and we're communicating effectively, the kids will be healthy. But we need to make sure that that is to something that we're paying attention to. And you shared, so just going back to what you shared about men and them really owning the emotions and owning all of it, because I believe that it's so critical for us to own the good, the bad, the ugly, and indifferent. You talked about self-actualization. You talked about the introspective work that has to be done. My platform is always self-awareness should lead you to self-development. Self-development is to identify those things that are that need to be cultivated, to be developed, to be built up and strengthened. And then as you do that, it leads you to self-mastery, and not self-mastery in the sense of perfection, but self-mastery in the way that you are able to regulate, evaluate, assess, and address anything that needs to be changed about yourself. And you can do it because you're aware. You're aware of yourself. You're aware of certain behavioral traits that you have, or you're aware of triggers, anything that can, trigger you in a positive way as well as in a negative way, in an adverse way. And so I think that that's very, very important for us to do as well. And so you said that it's increasing, that the men are starting to show up more and more for therapy. I just want to, for our audience sake, I want to let you know we have with us best-selling author Adama Braswell, and the book is called. He is a licensed therapist. The book is called From Relational Hurt to Spiritual Healing. It is a devotional journey from a broken soul to my soul mate. It's all about the love relationship and getting yourself healed so that you can be whole and you can enter into a relationship that is healthy and full of wealthy experiences. And so we're excited to have with him with us tonight, and he's sharing with us some of the things that men have to be cognizant of and need to be cognizant of, and then how women can come along and be a support system to help as they go on that path of healing and journey. So now the book, is it for the women as well as the men?
I'm sorry, you broke up for a quick second. I didn't hear the.
So the book, is it for the women as well as it's for the men?
Yes, the book is for everybody. The book is for anybody and everyone at all. Is not gender specific. There are some devotionals where I speak directly to men, and there's some devotionals where I speak directly to women. But the topics, they're universal. We all deal with things with like rejection. We all things deal with things like with self-sabotage or overcoming past relationships. That's not specific to men or women. So the book is for everyone.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because the reason why I honed in on the battle of the sexes, which is one of his chapters, audience, the reason why because I believe that that is designed to keep us at odds. And Kevin will attest that every time I get on, I always speak to that. Men are not from Mars and women are not from Venus. We're from the planet Earth. And we can communicate because that's how we were designed. We were designed to complement one another. That was the original design. All of this other stuff that came into play is designed to keep us at odds and keep us dysfunctional. But we can communicate. We have to learn how to communicate. And it's not about sexes in communication, it's about personalities. I may have a personality that speaks direct. I'm very direct. I don't know how to be fluffy. I don't know how to do all that stuff. So I speak direct. However, it's my job, as someone who is self-aware, to make sure, and it's my job as a leader of myself and a leader and an influencer of others, is to be cognizant that everybody may not like my communication style, and that I do have to adjust it. Not that I have to change myself, but I do have to change my approach if I want the results I want. If I want the results I want, then I have to be humble enough to change my approach depending on who my audience is. And so that's very, very critical. That has nothing to do with, oh, gender assignment. You cannot assign that to gender. It's about personality. And I love how you said, if we stop villainizing it, we can actually get to a place of healing and wholeness and really love each other like soulmates, people who are meant to love each other. We all benefit from it. When you fall in love and you have a funky good time with each other and you are there just working with one another to build one another up and strengthen one another up, then everyone benefits from it. You don't benefit with it if you're being toxic, if you're being dogmatic, and you're always being problematic. You're not compromising. You're being selfish. You're not understanding. You're not forgiving. You're not compassionate. You're not empathetic. That's when we run into our problems. And you just, what is it? Treat people like you want to be treated. So if you want your man to treat you, your husband to treat you a certain way, treat him a certain way. If you want your wife to treat you a certain way, treat them a certain way. And so I love how you really go in and say, hey, let's stop villainizing this. Let's embrace our differences, but let's also be considerate and compassionate and loving in regards to adjusting ourselves to make sure that our partners are healthy and wealthy. And so I love it. Like I said, I read off a couple of the chapter titles, Accept the Reject. So before we end, because we're already at the 45-minute mark, because this goes by so fast, when is something that needs to be discussed? So accept the reject, because a lot of times people get in their feelings when they're rejected by someone. And you're talking about spiritual healing. One of the things that we have to do is, the scripture is very clear. It says, though man has many plans, the plans of man are many. It's the Lord's counsel that shall stand, right? And so I always say to myself, if someone rejects me, I you know what, Lord, thank you, because it may hurt like hell. And I'm not going to say it. It can hurt like hell. It can make you feel ashamed, embarrassed. They rejected me. All of those feelings, those adverse feelings, I'm good. Why? Because I rather have God's will be done. I rather you reject me. And I like how Beyonce says, thank God I dodged a bullet. I see the good in saying goodbye, right? And I believe that that's what you're saying in this chapter. But kind of share that. How do people learn how to, get past pride, which is the hurting part, the embarrassing part, and be cool with being rejected? Because I got there. I know I got there. Good. I'm good. So share with the audience.
Yeah, that devotion definitely, it comes from scripture, Luke 9, I think it was verse 51 to 56. Well, the story is basically when Jesus was on his way to Passover, and he wanted to stop in a town to get some rest. He decided to stop in a town that was full of Samaritans. They wouldn't allow him to stop there. Because he was a Jew on his way to Passover, and their beliefs was just different. They rejected him, and all Jesus did was brush off his sandals and move on to the next town. Now the disciples that he was with became angry and frustrated. They wanted to pray to God to burn down the city, but Jesus rebuked them for that behavior. So I go into how he accepted the rejection. He didn't beg them to stay in their town. He didn't cry over the fact that they rejected him. He didn't become angry. He didn't become resentful. He didn't punish them. He just took it on and kept on his journey. And I think in relationships, that's a lot of things that's what we have to do oftentimes. People reject this. We have to learn how to embrace it, learn the lesson from it, but also move on. We can get sad for a moment, but we don't want to fall into any type of depression. We can get frustrated and angry for a moment, but we don't want it to take root inside of us where we become frustrated and angry with the next person we meet. So it's important to learn how to follow that example. Accept it that this person is not for me and move on. Because whoever really rejects you now, they really just they don't have a place for you where you're destined to go. So and you're on your way to somewhere else. So you leave that rejection where it is.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Totally. He kicked the dust off. He said, when the word is not received in one town, kick the dust off your feet and keep it moving. And that's
Yeah.
exactly it. You have to know, like your one of your other chapters are, you are a pearl. The scripture is very clear. Do not throw your pearls before swine. And so, just like you said, your chapter is accept or reject. Is the same thing. It's like, you know your self-worth. You have to know what you bring to the table. And if someone does not receive what you bring to the table, it's all good, sweetie.
Yep.
Because you don't need to go there. You need to have, I like how TD Jakes put, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated or hated.
Mhm. Good. That's good. That's good.
hmm So share with us about your chapter of You Are a Pearl.
You're a pearl that goes into kind of the creation of a pearl, the biology of a pearl.
Mm,
Um, it comes from the scripture where the man went and sold all his belongings just to get this one pearl. But I speak more about how a pearl is created. If you understand how a pearl is created, it's a broken piece of a shell, a broken piece of debris that gets caught in the mouth of a clam. And in order for that clam to protect himself from or itself from the irritation, it starts to secrete that crystallized type of what they call it liquid. And after continuously and repeated crystallization, it becomes hard. So I use that as an analogy for us in relationships. When we're broken, when we're hurt, and how when we plant ourselves in the presence of God and he continues to cover us with his blessings, with his grace, with his mercy. At the end of it all, we are as precious as a pearl in his eyes. So that just goes into like healing and the covering of God and how how precious we are when he layers us with all of his grace and his mercy.
Very good, very good, very good. I love it. And like I said, I'm going to just read off a couple of his chapters so that the audience knows. This is his book. I got his book. I've gotten this book. I wonder if you dated it when you signed it. Oh, you did that. When did you publish?
Ooh, that book
Yeah, this
was
book was
published. I believe
2000.
it was it, 17 or 18. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was 17 or 18.
Yeah, because this
That's
is
why
one of.
as you speak about the chapters, I'm trying to jog in my memory. I was like, "Ooh, that was a while ago when I wrote that." I was like,
Yeah,
I'm
I
refreshing
gotta
my
bring
memory
it.
right now.
I gotta bring it back because I
Yeah,
remember you came to Northeast Phillies Toastmasters,
yes.
and I had just come in. I didn't get a chance to hear you speak. I got a chance to be there at the end when you were finishing out, and I was like, oh no, I got to get this book. Uh, David Sims is the guy that I met you through, and I think he brought you to the Northeast Philly Toastmasters because it was right before you were having your book signing and all of
Yeah.
that other good stuff. And but I just said, "Oh my God, this is I wanted to connect with you because I had already written my book. I had already written Sweetheart Before I Say I Do." Um, And it's so important for us to talk about the love relationship because I work with people in the area of personal and professional development. But people don't understand how, you know, Kevin, in the Own It magazine, we talk about the spillover effect. We have each month, the Own It magazine has a topic that we cover. We cover it on all of our interviews and we cover it inside the magazine. And this month is the spillover effect. And it's important for people to understand what's going on with them. So you're wondering why you're not performing well on your job, or you're wondering why you're down, you're feeling depressed, and you're not operating in your love relationships to magnitude that you want to show up. And what's happening 9 times out of 10 is what we call the spillover effect. Life is spilling over into your job, impacting your performance there, or your job is spilling over into your life and impacting your ability to show up mentally, emotionally, and physical in your relationships, whether that's family, friends, lovers, whatever. And so people used to say to me, Marissa, why did you write all of these books? Because I wrote the book about Own It. Own It is about 3 pathways to your passion. Um, you know, Maintain Your Superhero Status is about parenting. Sweetheart Before I Say I Do is about the love relationships. And then I have the Words to Inspire You book series, which is all about spirituality. Well, guess what? We are dealing with all of those things, and we're trying to navigate through our lives, and then we're not understanding the impact and how spilling over, all of this stuff spills over. And you have to be able to have some groundedness. You have to have some foundation. And that's what all the books are designed to do, is to help you have a grounded approach to, first of all, waking you up to what's really going on with you, so that you can get to that point where you're able to navigate through all of that. And the love relationship is one of the most critical relationships because, and you can tell me if I'm crazy or what, but the love relationship, if you argue with your spouse, it can mess you up for the rest of your day in a different way than you arguing with your sibling, you arguing with your boss, you arguing with, now different with your boss because your boss, that's your money. But the love relationship can make you not want to get out of bed. It can cause you to plummet. You in the job and then you get in, am I right, am I wrong? And that's why we got to get to a place where we can really, as much as
right.
we can.
You're right. That's because it's such an intimate relationship.
It's such an intimate. The Bible says the two become one. You having sex, you become one. And I always share with Kevin. I said when we were backstage, I said, listen, I don't care what you're doing out there. Somebody's getting attached to somebody.
Yeah.
You can try to have casual sex all you want to. Someone's getting a soul tie, right? Someone's getting connected deeper than, and you can't control that. You cannot control that. You can navigate out of it. You can survive it, but you cannot control the fall. You're gonna fall. Somebody gonna fall in love. Either both parties fall in love or something. Somebody falling in love and somebody's getting attached. There's going to be an attachment. And when that happens, that's why you cannot take this casually. Can't hook up. Can't be hooking up. Can't be, how they say, kicking it. So somebody's butt going to get kicked if somebody gets hurt. So that's why we have to have these conversations. And so I want to give you a chance, Adama, to have some closing remarks. Share with the people, how they can connect with you, how they can follow you. What other books have you written?
My second book was entitled Ready for Relationship. So that book is just really spells out the 4 steps or 4 areas of life that I believe that a single person needs to focus on um, during their singleness in order to be properly ready for a happy and healthy relationship. So in that book, I speak about the importance of healing from past hurt and past trauma, because a lot of the times we jump from one relationship to the next without healing, and all we
Yep.
do is hurt others and continuously hurt ourselves. We get caught in that cycle of pain and hurt. So it's important to deal with that hurt before you get into a new relationship. Another step is the importance of strengthening your relationship with God. Um, we walk around with all these voids in our life, and we try to fill it up in different ways. We try to find love in different ways. We try to fill it up with sex. We try to fill it up with money or whatever it might be. But if we go to the source of the person, not the person, the source that can fill up those voids and doesn't run out of anything. If we're looking for love, or we're looking for peace, happiness, whatever it might be, if we strengthen our relationship with God, He can fill up those voids, so we don't have to look into other people to fill those voids.
Right.
Right.
And it also talks about knowing yourself, the importance of knowing yourself before you enter relationships. Like I mentioned, that self discovery, and that self actualization. Because when we don't know ourselves as an individual, as a person, we go into relationships, or we let people into our lives trying to fill roles that we were never created to fill. That's because we don't know who we are. And the last part of that book is just developing a mutuality mindset. It's, learning how to share your world with another person. So learning how to compromise, learning how to sacrifice, communicate, all those important aspects of a relationship.
It sounds very good. And sounds very needed. Needed. My co-host Kevin, do you have any closing comments that you would like to say?
Yes, I would like to say, first of all, I think you're a fantastic guest, brother. I would love to have
Thank
you
you, brother.
back to talk about your next book, the second book you wrote, and really get into some of those issues, because I think that so much of what you spoke on tonight is right where these conversations need to be. And we need to have someone who truly has the insight and experience to really delve into these type of conversations so that people can get the most out of it. Because certainly I'm more talkative than I usually been, but I've been just soaking up so much
Mm,
of what you've spoken on, because I'm writing a book myself.
mm,
And the book I'm writing is called The Whys of Men, the WHYs of Men.
man.
And basically, what it's about is what it is that we as men lack. Why, and especially when we spoke on the notions that we have a problem being vulnerable. I talk about traumas and how they affect us long term, how a lot of times they don't get addressed. And what happens is later on down the line, they begin to manifest themselves in ways that are detrimental to relationships, because we develop the most negative aspects, the negative views of relationships, the negative views of women. I talk about how the objectification of women that contribute to you know our attitudes toward women and how we treat women and how we treat relationships in general. There's a great number of things that I'm going in. That's why it's taken me a while to really get into it, because I want to make it as accurate and strong as possible. But I would love to have you back, and definitely I want to pick up your books. So
I
they're on
will.
Amazon, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
then definitely I really want to look into a lot of what you're talking about, because they are great of interest to me, and I think they can help me a lot in pursuing what it is that I'm doing.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'm excited. I'm so thankful that you didn't count it robbery to be with us and take center stage and own it with us on Sweetheart Before I Say I Do. Ladies and gentlemen, the book is From Relational Hurt to Spiritual Healing. And this is Adama Braswell, and he is with us. This is a devotional journey from a broken soul to my soulmate. This is only one of the books he has, and as he mentioned earlier, follow him on Facebook. You're on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
You're on
Yes.
Twitter. Give
And
your
well,
Twitter.
I'm on IG, so my IG name is right there. Ready for
Yeah.
relationship consulting.
Yeah, there you go. So connect with him, and make sure you follow him. And we want you, Adama, don't be a stranger to Sweetheart. Kevin's already saying it. Because we need the male's perspective. Not only do we need this male's perspective, but we need a subject matter expert who knows who has experience working with um, families, because this is a family matter. This is
Yeah.
not just a couple matter, and I speak to that. It's a family matter, it's a community matter, it's a society matter. Because when couples blossom and flourish, our households flourish, and if our households are flourishing, what's happening? Our neighborhoods, our communities, and our cities are flourishing. And so, without further ado, I want to say to everyone, thank you so much for chiming in with us tonight. I know this is a deep matter, it's a serious topic, and it is a lot of introspective work. We all need to show up in our love relationships and with our spouses and our mates, so that we are all healthy, wealthy, and really enjoying a fulfilling life. And so, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy. This is date night. So if you ain't out tonight, you better get out. There's still time. It's still early. Go enjoy that special someone. Thank you so much for chiming in to Sweetheart before I say I do. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate and love you.
Yeah,
All
thank you
right,
for
Monty,
having me.
feel better.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay.